All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. My name is Micah Carlson, and I am the Director of Marketing for Convergint Technologies. And on today's webinar, we're going to discuss some of the problems associated with active shooter response and how gunshot detection is an essential part of the solution to the problems associated with response time and the quality of information communicated to security officials, law enforcement, and the public during such an event. Now, as we all watched the Fort Lauderdale shooting unfold less than 2 months ago, and just after the initial shooting scene was quickly secured, there was unnecessary panic that erupted in other parts of the airport with reports of additional shooters and gunfire when actually there was none. Now, much of that chaos and confusion can be attributed to two things. It was eyewitness accounts and social media, which we know are not reliable sources of intelligence, and we can actually fill that gap with our technology, and we're going to get to that in just a moment. So as everybody's getting settled in and we're getting set up here, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge, we've got several dozen people on the call today, and it's actually from many different and diverse industries. There's people from healthcare, municipalities, cities, universities, K through 12 schools, and most notably, there's quite a few from the aviation security industry, which will be the primary focus of our call today. So thank you all very much for taking the time to attend this webinar. I'm going to go ahead and introduce our subject matter experts and the speakers for the presentation. First, I'm going to start off with Matt Powell, and he is the transportation security expert for Convergint Technologies. And Matt's one of those guys, I talk to Matt quite a bit, and he is constantly traveling. He travels all over North America on behalf of Convergint. And he's got what I'd say is a very unique position in the industry. He's able to interact with a lot of different groups and organizations. He talks to a lot of architects, consultants. He's constantly working with the end users in the transportation security industry. So, Matt's very fortunate. He gets to see a lot of the common security challenges out there and is able to provide recommendations on how others have solved those issues. In addition to Matt, we have Dan Michelinie. And Dan is the Senior Director for Shooter Detection Systems. He's got extensive experience in the physical security industry as well, including previous management role for a pioneering video surveillance and analytics company. And Dan as well is another one of those guys. He spends a lot of his time on the road. He's in meetings talking about and presenting the shooter detection solution to the end users. But he also works very closely with product management and engineers and designers for shooter detection systems. So he's definitely an expert in this topic, and it's great to have these guys on the call. So Matt and Dan, thank you very much for being here. And Matt, I'm going to hand it to you to kick things off.
Thanks, Micah. I appreciate that. As Micah said, I'm the transportation security vertical market manager for Convergint. Many of the attendees that I see on the list I've already met, but if I haven't met you, please feel free to reach out to me with any questions about the various technologies or services that Convergint provides. Let's talk about the founding of Convergint. So we're going to be going from Convergint into shooter detection, and what I want to make sure that we talk about is Convergint in the aviation industry, then why we have chosen to partner with shooter detection, and some of the lessons learned from our first deployment of shooter detection system in the aviation industry. Convergint was founded in 2001, and since then we have grown to 75 locations and more than 2,500 colleagues. In 16 years, we've grown to be one of the largest security integrators in the world, primarily because we are a service-based provider, meaning we do not manufacture anything. I often say that the only thing that we manufacture is good service. I had an airport earlier this week ask me, what is it that you guys have proprietary to you that you would install in our airport? And the answer is nothing. We are there for the end user, for the client. We specialize in providing our customers with solutions that fit their needs as our primary interest. And this means looking at the best solution first and the product manufacturer second. So we want to look at the best solution for our aviation clients. And it's this attitude that has allowed us to be our client's best service provider. So we have 6 areas of integration that we look at for our core business. And as you will see, many of these fit into the aviation market space. Some don't on the surface, but technology is technology, and solutions to problems are solutions to problems. So if you aren't sure how to solve a problem, or perhaps it's a situation you've never encountered, we can probably either find one that we've already solved it in another airport or another client that we have, or we can find one in another market, you know, taking from healthcare technologies and bringing it over to mass notification to adapt it to your needs. So we've grown a lot since 2001 when we started off in Chicago, and we're currently in North America have a very large reach between our offices and our Connect partners. And so if you see an office listed on there, if you see a partner listed on there, I encourage you to contact them if they're within, you know, a 4-hour distance of you, and have us come in and talk to you about what we're doing in the aviation space and look at some of the airport-specific problems that you may have and how we can possibly help you out and service some of the problems that you have. So this next slide is very important. This is our values and beliefs, and I know a lot of companies put this out there, but our values and beliefs are a little bit different because these existed before Convergint was created, when the people that, you know, the group of people that got together to create the company, when they got together, they put together a list that became these values and beliefs of, you know, the perfect company that they would work for. And it was a good mix of I and we, that there was that personal accountability and there was that company accountability to its colleagues and also to its end users. And so they put that as the basis of how they would operate and grow the company. And one interesting point is any Convergint colleague knows, or anyone that's around Convergint a pretty good bit as a client or one of our manufacturing partners, is that our yearly review is actually based off of the values and beliefs. And so that's how serious we are and how serious we take these. And most Convergint colleagues have them in their pocket and they provide them at most meetings because it shows that we do have a commitment to each other and to our clients to be that best service provider. Now, our values and beliefs mean that Convergint gives back to its clients and customers. This is especially true in aviation. You know, we want to provide choice to our customers and bring them new technologies like we're going to be discussing today with shooter detection systems. So we use our position as one of the largest integrators in the world to bring a variety of choices to our aviation clients. If you talk to our aviation clients, they'll generally tell you that, you know, we bring a lot of different technologies in front of them to discuss to see how we can best work with them on, you know, the custom solutions that they might need. And we also spend a lot of time on training. We spend about $7 million a year on colleague training. So chances are, if it's installed in your airport, we've serviced it somewhere, and most likely we've probably serviced it in another airport. And that's because we take aviation incredibly seriously. This is not just a market for us to go out, get maintenance and service contracts, and pass on manufactured products to clients. We're actively involved in the industry. We currently work within 30 airports and have 5 airlines as our clients. So, you know, personally for me, my job and one of the things that I do with all of our colleagues is that when you have 30 airports and 5 airlines, you're able to look out over all of those clients and see trends that are going on. You know, we work with the professional organizations that are out there to train our teams for airport deployments. And we're able to help organizations find solutions to complex aviation problems. You know, we've done a lot of different things, such as develop airport-specific service software designed around project management and maintenance in an airport environment. So it's specifically for airports for their CCTV and access control or systems like shooter detection systems. And we also work to master complex integrations for airports. This way we can partner with our manufacturing partners in deployments like identity management, mass notification, situational management, and of course shooter detection. We put a lot of thought and research into our partners, and that means that we're able to work with our clients and our manufacturing partners to have as seamless as an integration as possible. And with that thought and research that goes into it before we ever present somebody in front of one of our aviation clients, we do our research, and that's why we decided to work with shooter detection systems. When you look at the 3 reasons that we really wanted to work with them in an aviation environment, and this is one of the things that I had to really look at and look out across all of our aviation clients and help make this decision, is first, it's the experience in the technology. They are the leader and the most experienced, as you'll see, It's in their corporate DNA. They know the strengths, they know the weaknesses of this technology and design. The second is that it's a simple integration. This is not a difficult integration. It's either a standalone system, and you can monitor the standalone system, or you can begin to integrate it into your situational management or your video management or access control. It has very few moving parts, which means that there's less failure points. So you're not having to go off-site and come back to site with certain sounds or notifications. Everything is self-contained within the airport, so you're getting the fastest response that you possibly can, the most up-to-date information. And they have a low false alarm rate, and this was the number one thing that I asked immediately, because we all know, this isn't a bank, it isn't a campus, it isn't a school, it's an airport. We have different sounds, we have different sound frequencies. There's a lot of equipment that works in other areas that does not work within the airport space. So the way that they do, as you'll see, the way that they actually do that dual notification on the event creates an extremely low false alarm rate, which was very important to me to make sure that our colleagues, as they went out to the airports, that they were able to give this message to them that it wasn't something they were going to have to worry about. So when we decided to work on an aviation deployment with shooter detection, we wanted to address what the airport felt was their high vulnerability areas first. And this would mean that we would have to leverage the existing infrastructure and work to create a fully integrated system. So in the end, as the primary purpose of the system, as Dan will address, is to provide accurate information and save time in responding to the incident. So we wanted to make sure that we took care of the highest vulnerability areas, but we had to do it in a way that integrated so that they could make the most out of the information at the time that they got it and leverage the existing systems. So we didn't want to have to go out and buy a bunch of new stuff and come in and have to install it. We wanted to use what was already there so that we could make it a faster deployment. Now, the deployment strategy, every airport is different, but when we looked at the deployment that we've done, we decided to use a bit of a wheel and spoke strategy. We would start at the most vulnerable location that was not being covered by uniformed personnel and branch out from there. And that would mean branching out through the terminal, starting at the doors and egress points. So when you're looking at this and you're designing it, every airport has a different risk. You're going to have some airports that they want their admin covered first because of disgruntled employees, and they may have a large number of uniformed personnel already within certain areas of the airport, versus some airports might not have that. So you have to look at the different risks that are there. You also have to look at the location of the devices, the height and the square footage of what the device can cover, and this is something Dan will be talking about, is that it's very important as you use that kind of wheel and spoke like we did, which is start at one point and branch out, that you're looking at the device location and you're doing your planning based off of where the devices are you're going to get the most bang for your buck in doing that. The other thing that we found is if you have new construction going on with walls being worked on, it's a perfect time, or if you know you have construction coming up, it is a perfect time to just put the system into the planning, because the sensors can be placed in the drawings and make use of the existing spare cabling that you have. So if you already have construction going on, or you know you're going to have it going on, it's a perfect time to go ahead and start putting the sensors in. And that way you're not having to go in and do new construction. So that makes it easy for your planning going down the road. You already have that planning done, and then you're able to look at your high vulnerability areas and say, okay, what do we got to do now to get this system installed, as you'll see. The other thing that we found is that we ran a lot of our own research, and when you consider the SIDA areas and sterile access areas, that the shooter detection system showed us something. And when you look at the access control, when you look at the events that have happened, is that those areas become very unsecured very quickly as people panic, doors open, and people start to flee the area. So that's why these sensors are important, because now you have people moving all over the place. And in airports, we know that we want to control people's access where they can go. But the moment that this incident happens, all of that starts to go out the window as people start to spread out and get out of that area. So the more that you're able to use the sensors integrated into a full solution with your video and your access control, the more you're going to find out where the incident is moving to, because in our environment in the airports, those areas become unsterile very quickly. Now, we have a lot of different information that we can share with the different airports or any of our clients that are out there on, the deployment and things that we've found, but I think it's most important now that, you kind of know where Convergent's coming from in the aviation space, that we do take it seriously, that we have a number of clients that we look out and that we utilize all that information to come back and make sure that we give those solutions to our clients. Shooter detection was a great one that we wanted to work with, so we've deployed it into an airport. And now I'm going to go over and hand it over to Dan so he can start to explain to you this technology, how it works, and then do the live fire demonstration.
Excellent. Matt, thank you very much. Greatly appreciated. You're on such a roll there. I was almost hoping you would take over my part as well, but thank you for that. Jokes aside, guys, appreciate everyone being on the call today. As Matt said, I'm going to go into the technology, also do an active demonstration for you. We have a mock shooter in our office, so we'll showcase that. First and foremost, however, I actually want to talk a little bit to the problem itself. So it's important to understand when we're looking at active shooter threat, what is the profile of the active shooter? Well, we all know by definition active shooter is someone who, typically an individual who is actively engaged in killing or attempting to kill people in a confined and well-populated area. In most cases, this is completely random. There's no pattern or method. Unfortunately, a lot of times it has to do around mental health and instability as well. So again, very hard to track and plan where these events are going to take place. Because of that, law enforcement needs to respond quickly in order to mitigate the risk to other potential victims. And because the events are often over in less than 12 minutes, it's very hard for them to get on scene because of a delay, which we'll speak to in a little bit, and I'll get more into that. When we look at the threats across the board, I think a lot of people, and I know this presentation is mainly focused on aviation security, however, it's important to note that a lot of times, I know myself included, think of the active shooter threat as being prevalent in K-12 or educational institutions. However, that's not simply the case. In nearly 2 to 1, it's taking place in a commercial environment, and beyond that, they're happening at government, houses of worship, multiple different locations. So again, this just goes to speak to the fact that there is not one specific market or industry where this is prevalent or exclusive. So as organizations are now training both their employees and personnel on staff, they're looking to take technology to aid and augment that training and improve on policy and procedure which they're putting in place. When we look at the active shooter threat by the numbers, I alluded to it previously, the average event itself is about 12 minutes, and while the response time is greater, today anywhere from about 16 to 18 minutes, the issue is nothing to do with law enforcement response in and of itself, but rather the fact that by the time the shot goes off, there's about a 4 to 6 minute delay before 911 receives this information. So what we're looking to do with technology is find a way to eliminate that human from the decision loop, eliminate or completely reduce that delay factor in order to decrease the response time, decrease the incident duration, as well as decrease the loss of life during these events. So the key component, as mentioned, is getting that critical information. We want to take time away from the shooter and provide up-to-date, real-time info to law enforcement and first responders. The way we do that is first and foremost by identifying the what, when, where, and who factors of the incidents. First and foremost, what is it? Is it a gunshot or was it something else? Was it a pallet falling off a forklift? Was it a door slamming shut? So using technology to understand that critical component that yes, in fact, it was a gunshot and not something else is vitally important to kickstart the active shooter policy and procedure that organizations are putting in place. Beyond that, can we understand the when and where, the timeline and the location or movement of the shooter? These are going to be things that help paint the picture for law enforcement and first responders to be able to better initiate and engage the potential threat. And again, if we can get location and movement instead of what might typically happen, which is 911 calls start coming in that there was a shot in one location. However, as the suspect moves through the building now, law enforcement is not going to necessarily go to where those calls are first coming in, but rather having the information about the most recent shot, they can do a better job of responding appropriately and hopefully cutting off the shooter rather than following them through a wake of damage. Last but certainly not least, how can we get visual description? How can we get eyes on target immediately? Well, as you'll see in the demonstration and later in the presentation, we're able to use technology integrated with other traditional security technologies to not only get eyes on target and get a visual of the suspect, also to potentially lock down doors, tie into mass notification systems to get the word out to the broader audience. Again, it doesn't matter how the organizations are training, whether it's run, hide, fight, Alice, the fact remains that the human delay is a critical component that we're looking to remove as these events unfold. So I think it's important to understand in regards to the history of the organization, because while Shooter Detection Systems in and of itself is a relatively new firm being founded in 2013, the core team here has been doing gunshot detection since the late 90s, early 2000s together. So this is our CEO, our CTO, our senior product design engineers, and even VPs within the organization, again, on the business as well as the technical side. Started out working with a company called BBN Technologies. BBN was an R&D research and development firm out of Cambridge, Massachusetts, founded in 1948. Their bread and butter, their main point of research was acoustics. Dr. William Berger actually sat on the Kennedy assassination trials and testified that due to the acoustics, there were in fact two shooters in that assassination. So that being said, BBN, fast forward a bunch of years, in the late 90s, they were called up through a DARPA-funded research project to come up with a solution to an issue which our U.S. government was having, that our soldiers were being shot at and killed overseas while going off base on tour in their Humvees. What BBN created was a unit here. You can see it in some of the images. It's known as the Boomerang unit. Boomerang is an acoustic array which measured supersonic and subsonic incoming fire and would audibly report on that so the soldiers knew the location, distance, elevation, all the critical information about where that shooter was coming from. What they ended up doing, because it was so accurate and so well received, they ended up hooking up the automatic weapon systems of the vehicles to this solution and integrating and fusing the two. So now, not only would it audibly report to the soldiers all the critical information, it would also slew the guns and return fire, eliminating the enemy threat. BBN continued development, making both shoulder-worn units for law enforcement as well as soldiers, and even in 2010 successfully developed and implemented solutions which went on helicopters. So not only did these have to cancel out outgoing gunfire and cancel out all the noise from the prop overhead, but they also had to be able to report on a single shot inbound and give the coordinates of the shooter on the ground. They were able to do this successfully. So this is just, again, talking to the level of knowledge which BBN has on the acoustic development of gunshot detection. Fast forward a little bit, in 2013, they were looking at an indoor commercially available version, and even in their infinite wisdom, realized that for indoor applications, acoustic only presented way too many challenges in terms of false alert rates. So for that reason, we'll get into a little bit in a minute about how the technology uses a couple different factors and that false alarm rates are eliminated. So just to take a quick glimpse again at the timeline, through the years, over 45 million of R&D has gone into gunshot detection solutions, and we have now over 350 million in systems deployed worldwide, both indoor and outdoor. So to speak to the technology itself, what you're seeing here is a Guardian gunshot sensor. The sensor itself actually has 4 sensors built into it, and it uses a dual-factor authentication. So not only are we acoustically listening for the signature of a round being discharged, We're also using infrared signatures to, quote-unquote, visibly understand that, yes, it's a gunshot. So the sensors themselves require both the acoustic and infrared signature to report on a shot. When they are detected, the device itself makes the decision. We do not have to send anything off-site. We do not have to have it be analyzed off-site by an algorithm or an individual for that matter. All decisions done at the device level, and in 750 milliseconds reports back to our software what's going on, the location of the shot, doing all of that again with systems that have not proven not to false alert. So beyond being able to track the location and understand timeline of the shooter, we're tying into, as I mentioned before, both video management, access control, and other solutions to be able to provide other key and critical pieces of information at the time. In looking at how the solution is deployed, this is numerous different facilities, everything from campus to courts and schools and even a mixed-use building in New York City. So again, very nondescript. The sensors themselves look maybe like a fire detection unit. Most people in the organization don't even witness it or have any idea what it's there for. So it blends into the facility extremely well. As far as who's testing it and who has tested it successfully, again, across many verticals, not just aviation specific, but we've had major U.S. cities that have tested and deployed the solution for use in their municipal buildings and courts. A few different international airports we've deployed at this point. A very large European police department who said from the onset they intended to show that we would not live up to the specifications. However, after 6 months of testing, called us to let us know that not only did we meet, but actually exceeded the specification and their expectations of what we could do. So that's going to be a very large project that we're working on overseas. As far as testing and working with the Department of Homeland Security, we have done several, actually 5 now, of their active shooter scenarios where they have, one was in a subway system in Manhattan, another in a sports complex here in Boston, Massachusetts. And they've used our technology to help aid and augment as they're doing these trainings, because it's not only about simply using the system when it matters. You can also train to the system, which is what a lot of organizations are now doing. As far as the software itself, we have been vetted by some major very stringent IT requirements of some major organizations, both software and cloud companies, and have passed with flying colors with no vulnerability concerns or issues that would prohibit them from putting our solution on the network. And then last but certainly not least, we've been tested and deployed on some DoD networks. Again, because we are not an active listening device, there is far less concern, or no concern I should say, over any of that data being taken or subsequently compromised if it needs to be put off-site. So all of the decision, again, done at the device, no privacy concerns. All of that said, all of these tests were ran with 100% detection rate and not one false alert in any environment, no matter how challenging. Taking a look again around the ring, beyond testing it, who's been deploying it? So whether it's aviation or transportation customers, healthcare customers using it in key areas like emergency departments, pharmacies, other areas of concerns, schools and universities, both in the K through 12 as well as higher ed, definitely adopted the technology and see the use case. From the utilities market, the boomerang, the outdoor gunshot detection, widely fielded by utilities here in North America. And again, everyone from retail customers, both at corporate and the store locations, as well as distribution centers. We've been put through some challenging environments in manufacturing, both a few different types of facilities, some pharmaceutical, some auto, and again, very stringent requirements in terms of, or I should say tough environments in terms of those facilities where we have deployed successfully. And then last but certainly not least, we've got municipalities and government. As I mentioned before, we have one state who has deployed our solution across all of their state courts, and corporations who are adopting it day in and day out. In looking at the solution itself from a very high-level overview, the devices are Power over Ethernet devices. It's single cable going in. When a shot has been detected, that device then sends a simple text file back over the network to our situational awareness software, typically residing on on-prem customer hardware. Can be run in a virtual environment, does not necessarily have to be on-prem, but that is typically what's done today. From there, the information is then dispersed through multiple fashions. So whether it's our situational awareness client, which you will see here in a few, whether it's a notification via text or email, so we can notify 25 users natively via text or email, both as to shot and or warning, which I'll get into in a little bit. Third-party integrations, again, not to harp on it, but tying into things like mass communication, mass notification, video management, access control. We even have successfully integrated into some digital radio systems for a certain municipal court customer. So this way, if a shot were to go off in the court, guards don't need to look down on a device to see where that shot is. Their Motorola digital radios actually audibly tell them the location of the shot so they can respond appropriately. Last but certainly not least, we have the ability to tie in through a network I/O device to any dry contact. So anything you can imagine that can open or close a circuit, we can communicate with. So this can achieve integration into a simple alarm panel, strobe light, horn, siren, and we've even used this method to tie into some video management or access control solutions, which we did not have a full software IP integration to. So again, they still effectively were able to lock down doors and call up cameras using this dry contact integration method. What you're seeing on the screen here is our situational awareness client. It's a graphical user interface which has a map of sensor location. We'll get into it again in a few when we go through the live fire, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it. But this provides key and critical information as to the location, movement of shooter, and when tied in or fused to other systems can provide that visual verification as well as lockdown procedure for access control. Up on the screen, you'll see a whole host of integrations which we do, software integrations which we have written. So today we're going to be featuring Genetec as a video management solution that we're using to do camera call-up. However, there are a whole host of others. We have a team that sits under our CTO, and approximately 90% of their time is focused on doing software integration. So as the need arises, we will look at doing many more in the future. We're doing about one every other month to date, and that list continues to grow here every quarter. So with that being said, we're going to get into our live fire demonstration now. What you'll see here is actually two separate showings. One will be of the system standing on its own without any integration, and then one with the video management system fused so that we can then see what the camera call-up features look like and how to make that happen. So bear with us just one quick second as we transition. Our shooter, Rich, is going to get into place. Now, Rich is using blank fire rounds, and you'll have to suspend disbelief as our user interface that you'll see here in a quick minute will be showcasing an airport layout, floor plan layout. However, we are obviously not in an airport. We are in our office in Rowley, Massachusetts. So when the cameras do get called up, you're going to see the actual office and not an airport. So that being said, let me give you a quick overview of what you're seeing here. As I mentioned before, our graphical user interface. You can take any floor plan, any PDF or image and load this in here. On the left-hand side, you'll notice that there are multiple different floors, or in this case, terminals. This will allow for the graphical user interface to pull up different floors, different maps, depending on where the shooter's location is. Now, it's important to note, I should say, that the user does not have to toggle between anything. When a shot is detected, even if our application is running in the background, it will pop up full screen, and it will show the location of the shot. So no need to toggle between different floors if the shooter moves from one floor to the next. What you see here on the bottom is our legend. The legend is a color coding which gives indication of the sensor status and timeline of shot. So if you'll notice up on the floor plan itself, you'll see those green dots. Those are sensors that have been deployed. Green is healthy and operational and online. Green is good. You'll notice when a shot goes off that icon will change from green to emitting a red halo. As subsequent shots are fired, the previous sensors will change color from red to orange, amber, and even yellow. This indicates timeline of shot. So again, what we're doing is painting that picture for first responders to be able to understand movement and then act accordingly in terms of mitigating the threat at hand. Beyond the color coding of the sensors and timeline of shot, you'll also notice that there's a blue, which means that the sensor has been selected. If you want more information about a sensor or to simply move a sensor, the sensor itself would turn blue. And then past that, there is a warning offline and disabled icon as well. So if a sensor hears an acoustic signature which is recognized as a gunshot but doesn't see a flash, it will send a warning to anyone on the system that has been deemed administrator or should be receiving warning. If it is offline, it will turn gray. So the sensors have a constant heartbeat between the software and sensor itself. So if for some reason switch goes down or for any other reason wire gets snipped, we will send a notification back to administrators that it has gone offline, and you would see that in the user interface. And last but not least, if an operator, for one reason or another, disables a sensor, you will see that noted as well. On the right-hand side of the screen, you'll notice a phone. That phone is simply a mirroring application, and we're placing that up on the screen to showcase what the text message and email capabilities are. So you'll see this in real time. It's important to note that email is very quick, and for the most part, so is any text message. We cannot control carrier speed, so that's based off AT&T, Verizon, or whatever carrier. Also important to note that while this is a great feature, if there is a user or receiver of notification in an area of a building or basement which does not get cell coverage, obviously that text message would be inhibited as well. Kendra will move her phone in a second, and you'll see on the right-hand side as well the timeline of shots. So you'll see as shots come in, it's going to give written timeline and order of shots. So with that being said, Rich, if you'll ready position and fire away when you're good to go.
Shot detected.
So you will see that as this shot goes off, we have realized there's a shooter in the entrance of the building. Text message has been relayed, and you have noticed now on the right-hand side of the screen that the first shot came up, providing timeline and location of shot.
Shot detected.
The next shot has gone off, now in a different area as the shooter moves through. They're getting closer to the TSA area. As this goes off, again, the colors of the sensors are changing to note and indicate the timeline of the shots. Now the last shot has gone off in the screening area of the building. Again, you'll notice that halo, red halo emitting around the sensor that has detected the shot, and we're receiving text messages and putting those shots on the timeline so that we can see that in action. Now we're going to move into the fused or integrated solution, where we will take the system and now tying it into Genetec's video management, give it the capability to call up cameras immediately for identification. Now, with Genetec itself, you're going to be able to know, as many may well know, we're going to have the ability to not only have an alarm tab, but also have a monitoring tab as well. So in that monitoring tab, you'll see Rich. Rich, you want to stand up and wave to the crowd so they all know this isn't pre-recorded? Hey, Rich. Thank you. So again, Rich is our active shooter, senior product design engineer for us here at SDS. And now we are going to see, Kendra, if you'll place it back into, or actually, excuse me, leave it in monitoring mode, and we'll see when a shot goes off, how it pops up into alarm mode, showcasing the location of the shooter. So Rich, when you're ready.
Shot detected.
So you'll notice that in Genetec, we cue that alarm mode, not only as it called up the camera and put it into alarm mode and noted an alarm, but again, in our user interface, we have showcased where the shot has gone off, indicating it on the floor plan, as well as pulling up the timeline of the shot.
Shot detected.
When the next shot goes up, again, herein the camera pops up, showing movement and location of the shooter. The floor plan itself, those icons have changed colors to indicate the direction of travel of the shooter, and we've received text notification that a shot has been detected.
Shot detected.
And then as we show again, the shooter moving into another area, another camera gets called up as the shooter takes his last and final shot, showcasing that, again, we're receiving information both on the user interface as well as our Genetec VMS and via text and email. So on that, that will conclude the active shooter demonstration portion of the event. I would like to hand it back over to Micah to field any questions that we might have and go from there.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Very, very impressive, and thank you very much, Matt and Dan, for walking us through that presentation of shooter detection technology. And of course, thank you very much to our active shooter, Rich, for that live fire demonstration. That was very powerful. I mean, I've never personally seen that in action. I've seen presentations and stuff, but that, you know, to me, it really demonstrates how this technology can certainly help to improve that actionable intelligence that Dan was talking about. And of course, more importantly, can help really to save lives. So that's very impressive. Thank you. And as Dan mentioned, we did receive several questions during the event. And we're just going to go through and cover a few of them here. I'll go ahead and get started with a question for Matt. And Matt, we touched on this a little bit as the presentation went on. I know we showed some of the different integration, and Genetec was obviously part of the live fire demonstration there. But Matt, can you speak to what other and different systems that the active shooter technology actually does integrate with?
Yeah, and that's actually a really good question for a number of the airports. The primary, you saw the list. They are adding to them. To actually go down the list would probably take the rest of the time that we have today. But the most important thing is to just contact us and just start that conversation, because when we talk about, you know, what it's integrated into, we're also talking about the mass notification system. There's a number of different ones of those. You have your video system, access control, situational management, all the way down into your identity management, being able to pull data and utilize shooter detection for them. So for systems that is integrated into, it's kind of a, you know, case-by-case basis for each airport and what they have already installed, and then we have to compare what's already there. And if it's not already integrated, like they said, they're adding them pretty quickly. We just put that on the list to get it done. But right, for the most part, everything that we know that's out there, they're relatively integrated into it. We just have to look at, and it also comes down when you talk about integration, what do you want to accomplish? If you want to just use Genetec and shooter detection versus using, you know, your access control and your video, that's a whole nother thing. So we just need to work through it case-by-case basis, but we'll be able to take care of it with our clients.
All right, perfect. All right, this next question's for you again, Matt, and this one actually came from a current airport customer of Convergint, and the question is, does this active shooter technology connect into our iCare service portal?
So for people not familiar with what iCare is, because we do have some airports on our attendee list that aren't our clients, that is our service portal. So it's a browser-based real-time service portal that you can log into and see where all of your service and maintenance requests and equipment requests and everything else that you have out there for work orders in real time and see what's happening. Yes, it does. So if you use one of these systems, you install it in your airport, all of the equipment, all of your work orders, everything goes through into iCare. If you're an airport that uses ProTrack, the pieces of equipment are listed in ProTrack so that you're able to keep, do your dashboarding and look at a real-time snapshot of where your system is every day. So it does integrate into all of our existing service portals that our airport clients have.
All right, perfect. And this last one for you, Matt, it's actually a two-part, I'd say an environmental question, and we did touch on a little bit. And the first part of the question is, can the solution be, or the sensors be installed outdoors? And then secondly, you mentioned the different acoustic challenges in an airport. How close can the sensors be installed to the aircraft operations areas?
So I will actually, so that we get an accurate answer on that, shift it over to Dan, just because I don't want to give inaccurate information. It's an important question because when you look at, getting out into the, the area of, operation that's going outside and everything like that, you've got to start putting these closer and closer. You don't know who's coming in off the tarmac if you have a breach of the perimeter, if they get inside, the different areas that are very close to the that sensitive part out there. So I'll let Dan talk about how close it can be out into that area.
I appreciate it, Matt. Thank you. Yeah, and to answer, I know it's a two-part question, so we'll take it piece by piece. When looking at the Guardian solution, the units themselves are not designed to be outdoor units. So the units, not only being not weatherproof, we wouldn't want them to have rain or anything like that, but also the fact that they do utilize infrared signature to recognize on gunshot. So for that reason, we don't want them in direct sunlight being placed outside. And the weatherproofing is another issue. So no, the Guardian is indoor. We do have the Boomerang Outdoor, which the technology was based off of and derived from, so that can be a potential use case in an outdoor scenario. But in terms of also looking at the second part of the question in looking at areas near operations, well, we have not seen issues of false alert or anything like that. Typically, we will install in the non-sterile areas before the passenger screening where TSA is, or at TSA and before. That being said, some airports are looking at putting them in the gates as well. We have, through all our testing, not had issues with false alarms because, again, the way the solution works, it's based off of both acoustic and infrared, and we understand the timeline of when those two signatures will reach the sensor and understand that, yes, it's a gunshot, and no, it's not some other noise that's taking place in the airport operation. So hopefully that answers the question, Micah.
I think so, but it definitely, it also transitions very well into the next question, and this one's for you, Dan. And one we did not cover during the presentation that I heard, but the question is, does the system actually alert on suppressed weapons?
It's a great question, and unfortunately, we need to take into account all different types of weapons. So, yes, we have tested against many various weapon systems, suppressed as well. It's important to note that we haven't tested on every suppressor out there, simply because there are homemade and illegal suppressors coming on the market. But the vast majority and any suppressor we have tested against, even though it is reduced acoustic signature, that infrared light is still visible. That acoustic signature is still recognizable, and given our specific range of detection, which is 40 feet from the sensor, we have been able to stay within that range and capture unsuppressed weapons. Okay,
got it, good. And this next question, Dan, is a little bit, it's a little bit of a design type question, and understanding there's a whole host of variables that go into this, but can you estimate like how many sensors you say would be required for a larger airport?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, you hit the nail on the head. It's going to vary. Obviously, we want to look at protecting against the risk at hand. So when doing and working with customers, we want to do a risk assessment based off what they're looking to cover. We then look at floor plan layouts, as you've seen on the user interface, what the floor plans look like. To determine sensor location, we use scale imaging to understand how far apart the sensors need to be, which is typically about 80 feet apart, as that minimum threshold or minimal capture range is 40 feet from the sensor. So that being said, all those fun facts, there is a wide range. We're seeing some smaller regional airports that have deployed 15 sensors. Now we've seen some that are north of 100 sensors. So typically I would say for a large international airport, again, looking at the non-sterile areas, so TSA and before that, so baggage claim arrivals, we're probably looking at the 80s, 90, or 100 sensor range for a larger airport.
Okay, I think that helps. And I know today we talked a lot about airports, and this next question, you can really address this however you seem fit. But the question is, who is currently using the system? Yeah, I don't know if you want to address certain verticals or companies or maybe departments within organizations, but the question is, who's currently using the system?
No, it's a very fair question, and while most of our customers do not like us openly talking about them in a public forum, that being said, we have references available at our disposal. So if there is a high level of interest and a customer would like a reference, please reach out to us. You can go through Matt or go direct to us, and we can put you in touch directly with a reference customer in your vertical market. So that being said, in the presentation, you saw the different verticals that had gone through and utilized or currently implementing the solution. In terms of who's using it within the organization itself, again, everyone has some level of benefit. So not only are we talking to security, we're also talking to C-level individuals, whether it's a CFO that is aware of brand protection and keeping employees happy and productive, whether it's HR. There are multiple roles within an organization that see benefit in deploying this technology. So it's really a multifaceted conversation in terms of engaging and learning from the customer what's important to them.
Okay, got it, perfect. I think that's actually a good place to wrap it up. So once again, thank you, Matt, Dan, and Shooter Detection Systems for the live fire demo today. It was great stuff. To our audience, again, thank you all very much for joining us. We definitely hope you found today's presentation informative. If you have any questions or would like more information, you can contact our very own Matt Powell. His information, as you can see, is on the screen there. I don't know if there's a preference, email or phone, however you want to get a hold of him. And there were a few questions that were submitted that we weren't able to get to, but we've captured those questions, and we'll definitely get back to you very soon. So once again, thank you to everyone for joining us. Have a great day, and please, everyone, stay safe. Stay safe.